I'm a co-founder in the organisation turntome.org. It was founded in 2009 by myself and my brother Dermot. We didn't know what we were doing, except that we kind of understood the online space. We had no money, we had an ambition, we had a drive, we had a goal. We wanted to create a space for people online that could help them when they were in crisis. And we did it in dedication to the fact that we lost a brother to suicide in 2003. So there was a real personal side to the ambition, if you like. And I always feel he's with us all the way and still to this day. So it's in tribute to Cormac. And one thing that I noticed at the time was Cormac in 2003 was using online chat rooms, and he got a lot of support out of those. And from someone who worked in the online space and who was a web developer, I noticed that the chat rooms he was in were completely unregulated and unmoderated. And I thought there's an opportunity to create a space that at least provides some base level of standards and has moderators that are trained and has professionals that are there that you can create escalation paths. So this is what I'm going to talk about today, is the whole idea of suicide prevention online and how it can be done, and show you how we're doing it in Turn to Me, and give you some of the high level statistics over the last 4 years. So just to call out about the internet itself, it's receiving an awful lot of bad attention lately. I think we all know that. There's been some very high profile cases involving Ask FM. There's been cases involving Daniel Perry in Scotland where it was cyberbullying going on to the point where the poor young chap took his own life. So there's a lot of bad publicity and there's a lot of bad attention being attracted to it. So to counterbalance everything, I think it's fair to call that out and to say that. But equally, there's a huge opportunity. If we look, there's a suicide every 82 minutes in the UK and Ireland, and that's a statistic from the Samaritans. 1 in 4 people will suffer with a mental health difficulty at any one time. That's 1 million people in this country. That's 15 million people in the UK. If we look, male suicide rates have increased by 3.3%, and largely in countries where there's been reported job losses. So add all these maths up together and look at the way that the internet usage is going in this country. There's been an 800% increase since 2009, and the average person is spending 2.6 hours a day. Put all that together in an algorithm and you're going to realize that people are online looking for help. And there are probably going to be a high volume of people who are online who are suicidal. So what do? Do you say to people, well, we're signposting you into a helpline? Do we say to people, go offline? It's not always appropriate to do that. It's a combination of everything. And I think one of the big things that I've learned in the last couple of years is that the online world and the offline world are merging. I don't know if people notice that now. You're living what you're doing in your online world in your offline world, and vice versa. So people are socializing things, they're sharing things, they're creating a context between the two, but they're totally mutually inclusive now. So it begs to the question to say, if that's the case, if someone's going to reach out offline and say, I need some help, or they're going to pick up a phone and ring a helpline, or go to a friend or go to a family member, that they're equally going to do that online. And if they do that online, there's a strong probability that that person could actually be in crisis. And that's something that we, in Turn to Me, have seen over the last 4 years, that there's an ever-increasing number of people that come online that need that level of crisis intervention. And we've evolved how we approach that and how we deal with people, to the extent that we're now creating referral pathways for people, and equally keeping people online if they wish to stay online in certain instances. But it all has a very structured approach to it. The first thing you've got to ask when in the online space are, who are your users? Because you've got to understand who those people are that are coming to your site. So I think it breaks down into largely five categories. There's the first category of people who are seeking emotional support or social support through social networking sites. There's people who are seeking informational resources, so they might just want to know where to go, or they might want to get further information about depression or anxiety or something that they're looking and seeking for information on. There's people who are needing a support intervention, whether that's crisis-led or whether that is brought into a one-to-one setting where they are choosing to stay online to see a counsellor or a professional. And Turn to Me is doing that through its one-to-one counselling offering and through its Engage offering, where assessing people to the extent that they're suitable to stay online, first of all, that they're not in crisis, and keeping them there, and offering them a program that lasts for 8 weeks, where they can engage in online counselling from the comfort of their home. And then there's people who are seeking to offer emotional or social support, so they may have been through it before, and they're coming back on to I suppose, give that level of insight and expertise that they've had from their own personal journey, and that's equally as important. And then category 5, which I just simply call support surfers, who are people that don't really engage, they don't really comment, but that they're looking at what other people are writing or saying. So that begs the next question then, is how you assess risk online, because it's difficult. There are, of course, boundaries that are not there in the offline world. You can't see somebody, you can't get the read of the person, it's harder, the cues are different. So the way you approach it has got to be done differently. So it's all about measuring the risk and defining an escalation protocol and having appropriately trained moderators. So Turn to Me is a forum that has 25,000 people on it. It's got interactions of upwards of 300 a day, and there are a number of members within that. So of those members, they will classify into certain levels of risk, and that's what the professionals and moderators are doing on Turn to Me, is understanding. Let's use a traffic light system to make it a little bit more explanatory. If you've got people who are in a green status, so they're operating normally, they're engaging with people, they're offering support or they're looking for support, but they're not moving into the point where they're declaring that they're suicidal or they're at risk or they've ingested or they self-harm or they're in that particular risk category. Which would move into the amber level of status, which is people who say that they do have a history of feeling suicidal, they have a history of self-harm, or they may have tried or attempted suicide before, but at that particular time, they're not at severe risk. And then moving into a red level category, which is the most at risk, and these are the specific indicators that we would look for on Turn to Me, where they've got a specific plan or method. So it's someone coming on and saying, I am suicidal right now, or I have ingested, or I have cut, or I'm in a pretty serious condition. And the moderators and professionals establishing these facts. So have they a specific plan? Have they an immediate and actual intentionality to go through with a suicide? Because then that's immediate, that's a crisis situation that has to be dealt with right there, right now. And are there ongoing attempts of suicide or deliberate self-harm? In that instance, the most appropriate thing to do, that's a medical emergency. That's somebody that needs to go to 999. Either we will do that, or we will offer for the person to do that. And I'm going to get into the boundaries of that, because I know this raises a lot of questions. If the organisation is taking it on board to actually do that, is that breaching the confidentiality? Is that breaking the trust of why they signed up in the first place? But we will actually do that. We will contact law enforcement agencies here and in the UK, and we will provide key details to them where they can dispatch a car to them or an ambulance to them in appropriate time. And just last week, that was done just in time for a young girl that was online who had began the plan, if you like, and had the pills there to start ingesting what would have been a very serious attempt at suicide and could have been fatal. So in those instances, that's a life saved. That person may be seriously annoyed that that's been done, but it's a life saved, and that's the most important thing. And that's what the advice of law enforcement agencies throughout the years have been to Turn to Me. Their job is to protect life and property. So that is their job. They can make the call, and they have heavily advised that in those instances, report to them and let them make the decision. It's not for an organisation to make that decision. And with data protection and all of those particular pieces of legislation, they are all nullified when it comes to somebody in crisis. And we in fact got that straight from the horse's mouth, if you like, with the Data Protection Commissioner that myself and Derek went to see a number of weeks ago, where he confirmed that that is the case. The Data Protection Acts do not apply if somebody is in crisis and if they're deemed to be in crisis, and if you have an appropriate assessment of risk done in the first instance, which is using these 3 signals. There's then a number of watch signals, which is someone who has in the past had a suicidal ideation. So it's very important, I suppose, to distinguish the ideation, which is somebody who has ideas of suicide, as and against someone who's got intent. So someone who has intent is probably in the moment deciding that they're going to go through with a suicide, and they have the plan done, they have the whatever means that they've chosen to do it, and they've got everything around them. So then it comes down to what to report if that's the case. If you take it on board to do this, which we do in Turn to Me, what do you report to the law enforcement agencies? And we will provide every bit of information that we can, including the IP address, which is the critical piece of information that law enforcement agencies can then get to the person in crisis. There's a big debate in Ireland as to whether IP address is considered to be personally identifiable information. The Data Protection Commissioner confirmed that. In other jurisdictions it is. There's been a number of cases in Europe where it said that it is, but then the High Court here said no. However, the European case has come after the High Court case in 2010, but in 2010, Judge Charlton did say that it was not personally identifiable information, which I suppose makes sense in some cases because you could have a house with 5 people using the one computer. So how could that one IP address ascribe to a particular person? So, but it could and will be tested, I think, in this country. So what's next in terms of where to go and how to deal with risk online? I think there's a huge opportunity for all the providers to come together and work together to develop a protocol and an algorithm that will actually assess risk in a scalable way and use professionals and moderators to work with that. And that's something that we're now working on intern to me, is to gather together all the signals. So when people log on to a platform, they may not log on again for 2 weeks. And when they do log on the next time, the moderator or the professional who's on at that time could be a different person to who was on before. So you can record details, which we do in spreadsheets, but it's not scalable. You can't do that at scale if you've got that number of people coming on. So the idea is, and it's a big, bold idea, but it's at its infancy, is to assess different signals of people. So their duration, their frequency, the type of content they're putting in, the signals that they've shared, the notes of the moderators, the notes of the professionals above that, certain surveys, certain questions, roll all this into one, and then imagine a system where when the person logs in and the professionals see a dashboard that says, user XYZ is logged on. The last time they were online, they were at risk. They were seriously at risk. They haven't been on in 2 weeks, and here's the case notes, and here's all the information. So now knowledge really is power to be able to act quickly and be able to deal with the people who are most at risk, because that's always going to be the challenge with online, is the sheer scale and volume of people that you could be dealing with at one particular time. You can't close the door because that's worse. So if the door is open and people are online and they're coming online, and we saw all the stats at the beginning and they want to get help, how do we scalably do that? And I think this is one of the ways that we may be able to do it. So right now we've got a system called Thought Catcher, which is a simple mood and thought diary. So people can log in every day, create one thought every day, and it's confined, like Twitter, to a number of characters. They select their mood, they select why they're feeling that way, and they can put in some notes. It then charts their mood over the whole period of time that they're using the system. And the professionals can watch this. They can see, is someone's mood going up and down? Is it erratic? Is it stabilizing? Is it plateauing? And use that then to target the person and say, we think you would be suitable for online group support, we think you'd be suitable for one-to-one counseling, or we think you should go and see a professional offline, or you should go into an emergency department because you're actually at imminent risk right now. It's a medical emergency. You've ingested, or you've cut, or it's a serious situation. So evolve Thought Catcher, connect it in with the forums, connect it in with the group supports, connect it in with the counsellors, and put all this together in a central repository and use that key data and key knowledge to then continually keep assessing risk. And by that way then, guiding people into the services that they most need, and dealing with it responsibly and reasonably. And then with the peer-led community, which is forum-based, ensuring that the escalation procedures are always adhered to, that your moderators are trained, that they're Garda vetted, that they've got background checks done, that they're consistently supervised, that they themselves are debriefed if they have to deal with a situation that is difficult for any human being to deal with, that they themselves are fully trained in any changes, any policy changes, and that they themselves are keeping the notes of the times when they are on moderating, so that key data, that key knowledge is there for other people to access when they need to. And then rolling all this into Engage, which is a new program that was launched just last week and is already getting a whole load of people signing up, which consolidates that together. It offers people 8 weeks free counselling. They use Thought Catcher every day. They use specific groups each week. They go on and use the forums. And the dashboard now is already recording all this activity. The counsellors can then go in and see all of this. They can add notes. They can share notes between themselves. and then they can continually keep assessing the risk of the person as they progress through the 8 weeks. And hopefully, we'll see data at the other end that says the person was better off at the end than when they were at the beginning. So we've made an improvement. We've improved someone's life, and we've stood to what the organization is about, which is changing and saving lives. So this is a very high-level overview of what we're thinking of doing, consolidating everything together. It's just a kind of a nerd diagrammatical way of putting it together, but consolidating data and signals together to create a really powerful user management system, a UMS behind the whole service that will ultimately save lives. And like I said, it is dedicated to my brother Cormac, and it's, I suppose through the site his legacy can live on. So thank you for your time and listening.